I took a summer job on a cursed farm in Ontario. 13 sinister rules were exposed. Dare to discover. Sarah had no idea what she was getting into when she accepted a job on that farm. The poster promised fresh air and hard work in a picturesque setting. But as soon as she stepped onto the property, her gut twisted with an unshakable dread. The locals gave her warm smiles, but their eyes flitted nervously toward the fields, an unsaid warning hanging in the air like heavy fog. Sure, the farm had charming cottages and rusted tractors, but beneath the surface was a darkness lurking, whispering secrets. The seasoned workers talked about the 13 rules, and every time they mentioned them, their laughter carried a hint of fear. Never wander too deep into the fields after dark, they cautioned. Avoid the old barn's west side when it rains. Just words, right? But the way they avoided her gaze said otherwise. Each day passed wrapped in routine: milking cows, planting seeds, minding the chickens. But soon, bizarre occurrences flickered to life. The cattle grazed in unnerving silence, shadows danced just at the corners of her sight, and the silence grew thicker come twilight. Every time the sun dipped low, Sarah felt it crawl under her skin, as if it were alive. One evening, the urge to explore pulled at her like a shadowy hand. She wandered out, drawn deeper into the fields. There, nestled among jagged stones, was a cave, its entrance pulsing with a strange energy. Against her better judgment, Sarah approached, each step heavier than the last. Suddenly, the wind howled, whipping around her with a chilling ferocity. A voice, soft yet eerie, slithered through the night air. "Sarah," it called, and her blood turned to ice. Panic surged as she stumbled back, glancing around like a trapped animal. The stories, the lingering spirits, the cursed land flooded her mind, unearthed by the weight of that single whisper. Visions swirled around her, the smiling neighbor performing strange rituals at dusk, visible yet foreign, an unsettling realization gnawing at her brain. It all connected: the sadness in the workers' eyes, the grim warnings. Before she could piece it together, fear clamped down like a vice. In waves, the scent of damp earth filled her nose, intoxicating and repulsive, the taste of loamy soil mixing with her rising dread. What was she involved in? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the rituals unfolded, horrifying truths buried deep under the land began to surface, each more damning than the last. The rules were not just guidelines, they were lifelines. Ignoring them could mean catastrophe. But curiosity felt like poison in her veins, leading her to ask more questions, to probe deeper. The farm was not just an isolated patch of land, it was a crucible of dark history, and now, as shadows stretched and the air thickened, Sarah faced the undeniable choice: to turn back and hide from the truth, or to unearth the dark heart of the farm and risk awakening the very horrors that slumbered just beneath the soil, waiting for a soul brave enough or foolish enough to unravel their sinister grip. With the tension tightening around her like a noose, she knew one thing: her summer on this cursed farm was just beginning, and the chilling secrets of the 13 rules awaited. The winds howled like a pack of wailing banshees, and Sarah stood frozen, teetering on the precipice of dread. The cave loomed before her, dark and foreboding. She could feel it, an insatiable pull urging her forward. Fear twisted in her gut, tightening her breath until it was shallow. Was this the place where the whispers came from? Was it watching her now? Just then, a chill kissed the nape of her neck, and she spun around. The rustling grass seemed alive, whispering secrets she couldn't grasp, as if the entire farm held its breath. The path back to the farmhouse felt miles away. The comforting light inside flickered like a distant memory, and dread wrapped around her like a suffocating shroud. Would she be safe there? Would the darkness swallow her whole? Before she could decide, an echoing laugh broke the air behind her. It was Billy, one of the seasoned farmhands, his shadow stretching long in the twilight. "What are you doing out here, Sarah?" he called, his voice carrying a mix of concern and something darker. The flicker of moonlight glinted off his eyes, making their glimmer unervingly bright. "Just exploring," she managed, feigning bravado. But her heart raced, pounding in stern protest against the lie. "You shouldn't be out here after dark. The fields have memories, you know," he said, stepping closer and lowering his voice. "You remember the rules, don't you?" The shadows seemed to lengthen further as he spoke, enveloping them in a cocoon of unease. She recalled the chilling admonition, the way his co-workers had jumped at the mention of it. "Yes, I know," she murmured, but it felt meaningless now. "You need to head back. The others will start worrying." There was urgency embedded in his tone, an unsaid threat lurking behind it. "It's not just the animals. You haven't seen what's left out here. Not yet." His words haunted her, echoing around them as if even the wind was eavesdropping. Sarah frowned, stepping forward. "What do you mean? What's out here?" But the moment the question left her lips, a sharp breeze swept through the surroundings, stealing her voice and leaving only the hollow sound of silence. Billy's gaze grew distant, almost haunted. "Things that were never meant to be disturbed. They know when you're here when you dig too deep." Suddenly, dread gripped her throat, tightening painfully. "Dig?" she echoed, a million thoughts crashing together. The cave, what lay beneath the farm? Was it only curious animals, or was there something much darker? Before she could ask him further, an awful rasp echoed from the cave. It rose and fell in a rhythm that made her blood turn to ice. Billy's eyes widened, his previous bravado evaporating like mist. "We shouldn't be here. We have to go now," he urged, a tremor threading through his voice. As they turned to flee, the ground shuddered beneath her feet, and the whispering winds carried a new voice, ancient and angry, a swirl of dread weaved into the night air. "You've disturbed us," it hissed. Sarah bolted, her heart pummeling against her ribs. Shadows twisted and lengthened around her, hungry hands reaching toward her from the darkness. Each step felt like fleeing a grave, every second stretched as she and Billy stumbled back toward the farmhouse, desperation clouding their path. As they neared the safety of light, a deafening crash erupted from the cave. Sarah shot a glance back, her head spinning with terror and intrigue. What had they awakened? The night was far from over. A chilling realization sank in. She hadn't merely come to the farm for a summer job but had tapped into a nightmare that threatened to ensnare them all. She had to uncover the truth before it was too late. But what if the truth was worse than she could ever imagine? The farmhouse loomed ahead, its warm glow flickering against the encroaching darkness. Sarah felt Billy at her side, his grip clenching her elbow as they sprinted across the yard. The grass seemed to whisper beneath their feet, urging them to stop, but the threat behind what they had awakened shouted louder. They burst through the door and slammed it shut, hearts racing in sync. The comforting confines of the farmhouse felt fragile, like paper shielding them from a raging storm. The air was thick with tension as the distant sound of their pursuer echoed outside. What the hell was that? Billy panted, scanning the shadowy corners of the room. He leaned against the door, his breath hitching, and she saw the flicker of fear in his eyes. "I've never heard anything like that. I don't know," Sarah whispered, still catching her breath as she struggled to comprehend what had just happened. The images of shadowy forms reached out to her, grasping at her sanity. "We need to lock the door. Quick." Billy's shaking hands fumbled with the bolt. "And what? Just wait for dawn. We can't stay here." The hairs on Sarah's arms stood on end as she recalled the chilling words, things that were never meant to be disturbed. She felt a deep-rooted dread swell within her, a mix of fear and curiosity threatening to break her resolve. "Maybe we should call for help," she suggested, but Billy interrupted with a sharp, guttural laugh. "Who's there to call? The town knows better. Everyone avoids this place for a reason." He glanced out the window, his panic translating into frantic movements. "They don't know what's down there, Sarah. They just disappear. I've seen too many. Sarah felt her pulse hammer in response. Billy, what do you mean? You're scaring me. What have you seen? He shook his head vehemently, eyes wide. No. I can't, but the words died on his lips as a resonant thud echoed outside. It was heavy and deliberate, like something large moving against the earth. The windows rattled in their frames as if warning them of an impending doom. I want to let it in, Billy whispered, backing toward the hallway. We have to find out what we're dealing with. If it's out there, it'll figure out a way to get in here. The word sent shivers slithering down Sarah's spine. You mean we should go back out? No. Billy snapped. Don't you understand? We need to prepare. The farmhouse has secrets, too. There are things hidden in the walls. Frightened bewilderment twisted her stomach. What secrets? Billy gestured toward the worn, wooden walls. Growing up, I heard the stories. You dig and dig long enough, and you'll find it, the truth buried deep, inside. It could help us. Before she could voice her hesitations, Billy grabbed a hammer from the toolbox in the corner, his determination refueled by panic. Let us go to the cellar. If we don't fight back, we won't survive the night. Wait. No one goes into the cellar, she argued, her voice trembling as she imagined the horrors hidden below. That's against the first rule. Maybe the rules don't matter anymore, Billy intoned, resolved. We have to find out what's truly at stake. As he moved past her, the air grew heavier, whispering promises of unspeakable things. The energy shifted, darkness clutching at them like restless hands. Heart in her throat, Sarah followed. Each step felt like a descent into the abyss, the weight of unspoken mysteries tightening around them. Shadows flickered as they approached the door leading to the cellar, an entry to unknown terror lurking beneath. Suddenly, the heavy banging outside ceased. The air thickened with silence, pregnant with anticipation. What waited for them below? She turned to Billy, dread pooling in her stomach. What if we were never meant to find out? But he could only pause at the last step before the cellar door, his fingers hovering over the handle. Then we have to know before it knows us. A low groan emanated from below, like the earth itself wailing in pain, leaving Sarah to wonder if they had unleashed a darkness that couldn't be contained. Push came to shove, and now she faced the heart of the haunted farm. What would they uncover in the deep shadows? Whatever it is, she whispered, steeling her resolve, it better not be waiting for us. Billy's hand finally clasped the cold metal of the cellar door handle. It felt alive against his fingers. Once he twisted it, the older wood creaked, a sound that pierced the tension hanging thick in the air like fog. They exchanged one last glance, the flickering light of the farmhouse casting shadows over their faces. The uncertainty loomed closer, like a predator sniffing the air for its prey. Just then, a low growl reverberated from below, echoing off the stone walls. It rattled their bones, slithering into their minds. For a moment, neither of them moved, paralyzed by the dread swelling in their chests. The noise stopped, leaving only the tremor of what had just vibrated through the air. Maybe we should just leave, Sarah finally whispered, her voice barely audible, hoarse with fear. Billy took a deep breath, shaking his head as determination set in his features, a fierceness she didn't recognize. It's too late for that. We can't go out there now, not with that thing lurking around. All the more reason not to, she tried to protest, but he pushed the door open with a swift motion. The scent of damp earth wafted up, a pungent odor mingling with decay. It was overwhelming, and Sarah recoiled for a moment, swallowing the urge to scream. But curiosity, that ignoble foe, pulled her forward. Billy flicked on a flashlight, the beam slicing through the darkness. The cellar was vast, but the corners swallowed the light like a hungry void. Old, dusty boxes lined the walls, remnants of forgotten times. Shadows danced across the stone floor, taunting her, mocking her terror. Keep close, Billy said, his eyes wide, scanning their surroundings. Look for anything that might tell us what we're dealing with. As they moved deeper, the low growl returned, resonating with palpable menace. This time, it was accompanied by a scratching sound, like bone against stone. Sarah's heart raced, threatening to burst free from her chest. "We shouldn't be here, Billy, just a little further," he insisted, his voice harder now, layered with urgency. To their left, an old wooden trunk caught their attention. Billy hurried over, lifting the lid with a creaking protest. Inside lay a tattered journal, its pages yellowed with age. Without asking, he grabbed it, flipping it open. Shadows shifted around them as his flashlight swayed. "What does it say?" she asked, dread pooling in her stomach as the scratching grew louder, more frenzied now that he squinted at the text, brow furrowing in confusion. "It's a diary. Talks about rituals, something about binding and the awakened. There's a map here too." The scratching stopped, replaced by a resonant silence that roared in her ears. Sarah cast a nervous glance around the cellar, convinced the very walls were closing in. "Do you think it means this place? It sounds like something is trapped here." Billy looked up, expression darkening. "Or it wasn't trapped. It was buried." A bone-chilling wind swept through the cellar, enveloping them with a sensation of dread. The flashlight flickered ominously, the beam weakening, and then, darkness closed swiftly around them. "Billy!" Sarah shrieked. "We have to get out." Before she could react, the growling returned, sounding closer this time. A shadow moved in the pitch black, large and ominous. Then came the voice, guttural and low, echoing from the shadows. "You disturbed what should remain." The light flickered back to life, revealing twisted forms writhing just beyond reach, their eyes glinting like the depths of hell itself. Heart pounding, Sarah backed away, feeling the cold sweat bead on her neck. What did we unleash? Billy's eyes widened, realization dawning. "We need to finish this. If we don't, it won't just leave us." A deep laughter resonated around them, and the walls echoed back, merging into a cacophony of madness. What horrific truths lay ahead? "Are you ready to find out?" Billy asked, gripping the journal tighter. As shadows closed in once more, Sarah swallowed her dread. Maybe we'll learn too late. And so they moved deeper into the darkness, into whatever had stirred. Beneath the farmhouse, past the point of no return. Would they uncover salvation or damnation? The growling intensified, as if urging them towards an eerie awakening. The darkness wrapped itself around them like a suffocating cloak, the oppressive silence amplifying every sound, each breath, each shuffle of their feet against the cold, concrete floor. The growling had shifted, lower now, resonating like a hunger that would never be satisfied. Billy held the flashlight at arm's length, the beam struggling against an expanse of black that pressed in from all sides. "What do we do?" Sarah whispered, panic lacing her words as her eyes darted to every shadow. "We follow the map," Billy said, his resolve hardening. He turned the pages of the journal, breath hitching as traces of old ink became visible again. "It says there's a place somewhere under this floor." "Under the floor?" Sarah's voice climbed an octave. "You can't be serious." Without another word, he knelt, tracing his fingers along the dusty surface. The growling morphed into a low rumble, the vibrations penetrating their skin as he pressed down. A wood plank shifted slightly, a sign of a concealed trap. "Help me," he murmured, focusing. Together, they pried it up, air rushing with musty smells, drawn from the abyss below. What lay beneath? Breath caught, they peered into a dark crevice, an opening gaping like a mouth ready to swallow them whole. It was smaller than they expected, a hole barely large enough for a body to slip through. Billy glanced at Sarah, the tension palpable. "Are you ready?" "Ready." "Ready for what?" She bit back a whimper. "To end this," he declared, voice shaky yet steady. Then, in one bold movement, he slid himself into the darkness. She wasn't prepared for the splatter of dirt that cascaded around him, nor the shuddering echo of something large shifting further down. "Wait!" she cried, but the voice only reverberated back, swallowed by the blackness, after a breathless moment, she steeled herself and squeezed into the opening, feeling its constricts, the dirt smudging her hands. The flashlight flickered as she pressed on, the air thick with the scent of something ancient, something that had rotted long before their time. They landed on hard ground, the space feeling impossibly vast around them. "Billy?" A tremor of worry colored her call. "I'm here. Over here." His voice surged from deep within, echoing with urgency. Sarah stumbled toward him, light beam darting in confusion, panic threading through her mind. What lay ahead? A figure? Something monstrous lurking? The growling swelled again, richer and more aggressive, charging through the dark. "Billy! We have to go!" she yelled, her heart pounding against her ribcage like an impatient animal. "No. Look!" His flashlight flickered to reveal something embedded in the stone wall. Symbols carved deep, swirling designs that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. What is that?" she gasped, instinctively taking a step back. "The diary mentions it. This is a binding circle." It's meant before he could finish, a deafening roar erupted, splintering her thoughts. Shadows shifted along the walls, moving in the light's brief reach and then disappearing into the void that in the chaos. Sarah felt an icy grip clench around her ankle. She let out a shriek, looking down to see a claw emerge from the earth, pale fingers coiling around her foot. Adrenaline surged through her, and she kicked, breaking free. "Run!" she screamed, fear igniting her legs as she raced back toward the hole, but Billy stood rooted, staring at the wall. "Billy, we don't have time." "The markings," he shouted, "they're a way to stop it. We need to complete the ritual." Their surroundings grew darker still, the air thickening with a metallic taste. Fear transformed to desperation as she grabbed his arm. "We're not doing anything. We're getting out." She dragged him toward the opening, but the growling crescendoed into a deafening shriek that reverberated through the walls, shaking her to her core. Just as they reached the hole, the clawed hand erupted, clawing upward, seeking them with primal rage. "Hold on!" Billy yelled, pulling her upward. In the chaos of scrambling limbs, shadows pooled, and the walls seemed to pulse with hunger. "Do you feel it?" she breathed, urgency clawing at her not to look back. "Sarah!" And then, right in front of them, they saw it. Emerging from the darkness, glistening eyes burned bright, and a body unlike anything human loomed closer, and Sarah realized just how deep they had fallen into this nightmare. "Let us go." But as they rocketed back into the cellar, the growling became laughter, a chilling sound ripping the air as they scrambled through the hole and slammed the trapdoor shut, gasping, faces pale with terror. Did we escape?" Sarah stammered, gripping his arm tightly. Billy shook his head, eyes wide with fear, as the shadows outside twisted and warped, the growling becoming a low whisper that echoed against their hearts. "No, not yet. It knows we're here." Something fragile within her snapped. "Then let us make sure it never comes back." But as they turned back to the journal, the page fluttered open as if guided by an unseen force. A new sentence glowed in the dim light, and just then, laughter filled the cellar, a voice that only they could hear, silencing their thoughts with a haunting promise. Finish it. What awaited them now? A newfound horror. As the growl returned, rattling their bones and urging them forward into the depths of fear, Sarah whispered, "What does it want?" With shadows closing in, they faced whatever madness awaited them, fragile hope slipping through their fingers along with time. The heavy silence pressed in again, a tomb-like weight that made Sarah and Billy feel almost claustrophobic. The flashlight flickered uncertainly, illuminating the runes on the wall which seemed to writhe and twist with malevolent energy. It was as if the markings were alive, breathing through the power coursing beneath the surface. "We need to make a choice," Billy said, his voice low and tense, more a whisper than anything else. "Do we try to complete the ritual, or do we find a way out?" A tremor ran through Sarah. She searched his face, caught between hope and dread. What if completing the ritual is what it wants? The growling outside grew louder, angry and persistent, as if it were responding to their indecision. The sounds of scratching claws against wood crept into their ears, each scrape a harsh reminder of the danger that lingered just outside their sanctuary. "Well, we can't stay here," she said, exasperation threading her words as she gripped the journal tighter, feeling its edges bite into her palm. Billy took a deep breath, glancing toward the dark void that awaited them if they chose escape. "But what if it doesn't stop? What if it finds us again, and we haven't done anything to bind it?" The laughter, a sick, twisted thing, came back, echoing across the cellar, swirling in the shadows, taunting them. "Finish it." The voice was almost friendly, yet laced with malice. "Let us just run," shouted Sarah, her heart racing, the profound chill wrapping itself around her bones. "I can't take this, Billy." Billy's mind was racing. Behind them, the growls morphed into screams of frustration, escalating with the tension that pricked at the air. "If we leave now, we're giving it what it wants us, running scared. We need to fight back." A sudden shudder rippled through the cellar, and the very ground beneath them seemed to pulse in response. Something deep within the earth sighed, a long, grating noise echoing through the cramped space. The air thickened, growing heavy with dread, and Sarah felt the weight of fear squeezing her throat. "Then what do we do?" she managed to ask, her voice trembling. Billy looked back at the journal, his brow knotted tightly. "The symbols, Sarah. If the diary has the power to bind it, maybe it also has the power to destroy it." Before she could respond, the ground beneath them roared, as if rejecting this notion, and Sarah felt her stomach drop. The whispering laughter grew closer, wrapping around them like a predator closing in on prey. "Are you sure about this?" she breathed, desperately attempting to shove doubt from her mind. Her grip on the flashlight faltered, its beam shivering. "It's our only chance," he said, voice steadied despite the chaos around them. "If we don't try, we might never know what we're fighting against." The growling echoed again, sharper, slicing through the dim hush of the cellar like a knife. Shadows shifted ominously close to them. Ignoring the heaviness in the atmosphere, Sarah stepped forward, pulse racing. "Then let us do this." Billy opened the journal, scanning wildly for the passages that might hold the key to their salvation. The letters seemed to flow like water under his fingers, and with each turn of the page, the air grew colder. Their breaths puffed in the stagnant air, misty and uncertain. Suddenly, from below, powerful energy surged upward and engulfed them both. The symbols on the wall sparked, illuminating the darkness with a hellish glow. Sarah stumbled and fell as the light expanded, pulling her back like a tide. "Billy! What is happening?" Panic gripped her voice as shadows coiled around their legs, snaking and knotting. "Hold on!" he shouted, but the rising force was relentless. The darkness was clawing at them again, lifting them higher into its depths. "We need to hold the light." Just as the darkness closed around them, swallowing the last echoes of their cries, the journal erupted in a flash of brilliant white, illuminating the horror with blinding radiance, and then silence. It was as if the entire world had blinked out of existence. "What happened?" Sarah managed to whisper, heart racing as she pushed against the seeping shadow around her. "Look!" Billy shouted, pointing ahead. To their amazement, they saw a figure emerge from the gloom, a child's silhouette, small and delicate, shrouded in the light. "Help us," it whispered, a haunting echo that pierced through their fear. As Sarah's heart raced against her chest, she glanced at the journal, its pages flipping wildly as if carried by an unseen wind. "What is going on?" she sputtered, terror clawing at her insides, but as the soft light enveloped them, shadows came crashing down, fangs bared. In that moment, they felt the monstrous weight of what lay beyond, pulsing with hunger and rage. "Do you want to finish it?" the child asked, tilting its head, wide eyes glistening with an eternal promise. A primal scream tore through the air, louder than before. And through it all, a new darkness began to coalesce around them, hungry and waiting, as the shadows promised something even worse than before. The silence shattered with a sharp crack, splintering the darkness that enveloped them. In that horrid moment, the unseen forces seemed to snicker in delight, relishing their fear. Shadows slithered closer as the child's whispers morphed into maddening laughter, echoing endlessly through the void. "Billy, we can't just stand here," Sarah yelled, her knees trembling. The luminous figure of the child began to flicker, as if the darkness was threatening to consume it. "I don't think it's here to help us," Billy said, his eyes dark with dread. He stepped closer to the child, drawn inexplicably, almost as if the creature beckoned him. "Finish what you started," the child urged, pointing towards the journal still trembling in Sarah's hands. "Complete the binding. Only then can you escape." "No," Sarah cried out, instinctively pulling the journal closer. "There has to be another way." But the child's eyes bore into her, filled with a twisted mix of hope and despair. "You must choose now. You can save us all or lose everything." The shadows surged, swallowing the glow, and uncertainty gnawed at Sarah's insides. Each heartbeat felt like a hammer striking against her chest. She glanced at Billy, who was now caught in a trance, mesmerized by the child's eerie gaze. "Billy! Don't listen!" she shouted, panic surging anew as darkness coiled around her legs, tightening like a noose. "Sarah, it's our only way out," he whispered back, the strain in his voice evident. "We have to do something." The bared fangs of the shadows shifted closer, bringing with them a fetid odor that clawed at her throat. The child's voice rose, louder than the growls outside. "Do it. Bind the beast. Or you will never escape this nightmare." Billy reached for the journal, eyes gleaming with an unsettling light. "If we bind it, we might control it. But at what cost?" Sarah felt the despair rise, vibrating through her veins. "What if we doom ourselves?" As he flipped through the pages, shadows writhed violently, pulling them in different directions. Each flick of the page unleashed a wave of blinding light, pushing against the crushing darkness. Images of writhing forms danced upon the pages. Creatures twisted and warped beyond recognition. "Look!" Billy gasped, pointing at a large rune etched on a page. "This is it. This symbol, it can contain the darkness." His fingers trembled as he traced the etching with trepidation. The shadows hissed, almost offended by their defiance. Sarah felt the temperature drop, air thickening with despair. "No. You're inviting it here," she shouted, desperation clawing at her throat as she felt a pulse shift in the ground below them. With a roar that echoed like 1,000 tormented souls, the darkness surged, sweeping towards them with malicious intent. "Finish it!" it rasped, craving their fear, their compliance. In that moment, their eyes locked. Billy's resolve faltered, but the child, the flickering beacon of light, urged him on, forcing him to make the final move. "No!" Sarah screamed, launching herself toward him, but it was too late. As her hands grasped for his arm, he pressed down, completing the binding incantation at the heart of the chaos. The walls of the cellar trembled violently, a deep thrumming reverberating through the air, as the symbols glowed like a supernova. Writhing shadows screamed, clawing against an unseen barrier now encasing them. Then darkness erupted. Everything was swallowed in a blinding eruption of energy, breaking them apart, thrusting them into a weightless abyss. When the world settled again, Sarah gasped, clambering to her feet. "Billy!" she cried out, her heart pounding, fear gripping her again. But he was gone. The darkness thinned, revealing a twisted reflection of the cellar, now choked with shadows without his light. "Help us," echoed the child's voice, more haunting than before. And from the corners of the room, new shapes emerged. No longer familiar, they were the shadows' offerings, transformed and tortured. Bodies that once breathed were now bound to the darkness, eyes hollow, seeking. As terror washed over her, Sarah felt the ground rumble again, more intense and threatening. In that fractured reality, echoes of laughter twisted through the air, promising something darker ahead. Finish it. Was there a choice left, or was it already too late? The air around Sarah thickened, stifling as if the very atmosphere weighed heavy with despair. She cast frantic glances toward the shadows that twisted into palpable forms, each inch closer tugging at the sanity she fought so desperately to cling to. "Billy!" she shouted again, fists clenched. But there was only silence. The child's face, once a flicker of hope, now twisted into a horrific visage. "You shouldn't have done that," it hissed, its voice a sickly sweet melody that dripped with malice. "You've bound him and now you'll pay the price." Sarah backed away, feeling the cold walls close in around her, shadows stretching like tendrils grasping for her, hungry and relentless. "What have I done?" she whispered, terror bubbling in her throat. She recalled the bind, the ritual. The cost of control. The promise of escape. "Finish what you started," the child crooned mockingly. "Without him, you're just another offering." With each word, the shadows surged, their whispers rising into a cacophony of mocking laughs that threatened to drown her reason. "No." She shook her head violently, tears blurring her vision. She had to find a way out, had to reverse the consequences of their decision. There had to be anything that could bring Billy back. With a quick decision, she swung the journal in her grip wide, pages fluttering like desperate wings in the suffocating darkness. The drawing spiraled, each rune glowing ominously as she searched for the one that could undo the binding. "Come on, come on!" she gasped, each word spilling from her mouth as she rifled through ancient incantations and cryptic notes. The shadows crept ever closer, writhing with impatience, the atmosphere electric with growing tension. "You won't find what you seek," they hissed, their voices a twisted symphony of lost souls. "Shut up!" Sarah cried out, a surge of defiance flooding through her. She could feel the thin line of desperation turning to rage. "I won't lose him. I won't let you take him." A flicker caught her eye. A rune, glowing faintly amongst the pages, one that spoke of purification, a potential salvation. She felt power swell in her core, hope igniting amidst the fear. This was it. But it wasn't without risk. "By the light that binds and the darkness I cast away," she recited, voice trembling, her heart hammering. "Let the bound be free and the shadows kept at bay." The words surged outward, vibrating through the air. The shadows hissed in fury, recoiling, pressing against the edges of the light she summoned. With each heartbeat, the rune pulsed stronger, illuminating the cellar, but the price was steep. Sarah felt the ground shake violently, the exposed shadows recoiling like the heat from a flame. "Foolish girl!" they screeched, voices intertwining in a feral harmony, clawing at her very soul as she faced the onslaught. "You'll join us in despair." "Billy!" she roared with all her might, summoning his name as if it were a weapon. "Come back to me." The journal vibrated violently, light bursting forth as the darkness around her shrieked in anguish. Shadows swirled within it, twisting and contorting, generating an eerie wave of faces, each filled with torment and sorrow. In her grip, the energy intensified. With a final desperate shout, Sarah thrust the journal toward the shapes, desperation transforming into fierce determination. "I command you. Leave him be." With a deafening crack, the cellar shook. But as the dust settled and silence reigned, the flicker of light feebly illuminated the room. Was it enough? Was Billy freed, or could the shadows have claimed him instead? As the echoes faded, Sarah could feel something shifting again, a presence lingering still, concealed and malevolent. "You cannot escape, not yet." The shadows returned, coiling around her, and she braced herself for what lay ahead. The darkness whispered again, the promise of unexpected horrors heavy in the air. What would she find behind the next door? Would it be freedom, or a deeper descent into despair? The air had thickened further. Sarah stood frozen, heart pounding in her ears, as the shadows contorted around her like a living entity, crawling closer, hungry. Whispers filled her mind, a maddening chorus of voices that tried to pull her back into despair. Darkness squeezed like a vice, every breath aching. "Let him go!" she screamed into the abyss. "Isn't it showtime?" The child's voice rang out again, laughter slithering from the darkness. The last remnants of light flickered, casting grotesque forms of long-forgotten horrors against the walls. They danced tantalizingly close, mocking her desperation. She stumbled backward, the journal pressed tight against her chest. The fear had somehow sharpened a direction within her. She had to find the door. The door that led out of this hell. The one that might show her to Billy or to the horror that awaited them both. "Where are you, Billy?" Shadows twisted before her, forming into shapes that reminded her of a long-loaded gun, ready to fire despair into her heart. Tall figures emerged, anguished faces with hollow eyes that glimmered with malevolence. She could almost feel them breathe her fear. "Step into the dark," they hissed, voices blending into one shivering sound. "No," she muttered, trying to drown them out. She was more than just an offering. She could feel the remnants of that power still lingering from the incantation, her weapon. With a clenched jaw, she flicked her eyes back to the pages, searching desperately for guidance. A faint shimmer caught her eye. An illustration, barely perceptible, of a door surrounded by runes that whispered of safety and revelation. Tension thrummed in her fingertips, a plea for that knowledge. She had to tap into that chaos again, even if it meant thrusting back against the very thing that clawed at her heels. "Open!" she shouted, thrusting her palm toward the drawing. "Take me to him." The room erupted with blinding light, a kaleidoscope of shapes folding in on themselves. The shadows reeled, distorting as if caught in a storm. She felt her surroundings stretch and warp, and she clung to the hope that this moment would shift fate. Yet an eerie calm followed. The whispers faded, retreating into a suffocating silence. Sarah exhaled shakily, thinking maybe she had succeeded. But doubt knotted in her gut. Where was the door? Without warning, the floor cracked beneath her feet. She fell, landing hard on the jagged stones below. Adrenaline shot through her veins as she scrambled to her feet, eyes darting around. Her heart sank. "Welcome to the underworld," a voice purred from the shadows. Out of the gloom stepped a figure, draped in tattered robes that flowed as if underwater. "You thought you could undo fate?" the figure asked, face obscured by dark shadows. "There are consequences." "Where is Billy?" she gasped, fists balled. "Saved," he whispered, breath chilling her to the bone. "Or cursed. This is where darkness claims what it desires, the price for tinkering with lives. Come now, it's showtime." As he raised an arm, the walls pulsated, alive with the energy of ancient anger. The silhouettes of lost souls pressed in closer, anguished wails filling the air. Each face twisted in torment showed glimpses of what could become of her. A distant wail broke through, unmistakably Billy's voice, echoing through the shadows. "Sarah!" Her heart soared and twisted into dread. She turned toward the noise, but fear gripped her. As she charged forward, the figure laughed. "Do you dare venture deeper? Or remain tethered to despair?" Behind her, the walls quaked threateningly, sending shards of broken promises crashing to the floor. Sarah felt an undeniable pull toward the sound, the promise of connection lured her. But the figure's shadow deepened, stretching menacingly. "Choose wisely," he taunted, as the darkness surged, inching ever closer. Would she lose her last chance? With a final instinctual surge, she lunged, feeling time stretch, the connection with Billy shimmering just out of reach. What awaited her on the other side? Would it shift her fate, or plunge her deeper into despair? The air felt electric with anticipation as Sarah plunged forward, heart racing, desperate to follow the sound of Billy's voice. Shadows clawed at her back, insistent whispers tugging at her mind. "Don't go," they urged, but she pressed on, driven by the hope that he might still be saved, that maybe there was a path back to the light. "Billy!" she shouted, panic surging as the dark figure's presence threatened to swallow her whole. Movement shimmered through the thick shadows ahead, the source of the haunting wail. "I'm coming." With each step, the darkness writhed around her like a living serpent, its cold breath creeping along her skin, but the connection to Billy flickered like a beacon in the night. She plunged forward into the void, nearly blinded by pulsing energies radiating from the walls. Sarah. The desperation in his voice was unmistakable. It echoed through the suffocating fog, guiding her through the thick web of shadows. She could almost see him, or at least a glimmer of his silhouette in the distance. Hold on. I'm almost there. She barreled forward, feet pounding on the stone floor, the oppressive atmosphere slithering and snapping at her heels. Doubts crept in, twisting within her. What if he was lost? What if he had been consumed by the darkness? No, she breathed. We'll find a way out together. Then, like a breath of fresh air, his voice broke through the chaos once more. Sarah. It was closer now, filled with urgency and fear. Just beyond the veil, she saw a flickering light, a glow of warmth that stood in stark contrast to the darkness surrounding her. With renewed strength, she sprinted towards it, the chill of the abyss fading behind her. At last, she burst through the haze, into a vast chamber that opened up before her. The walls pulsed with light as symbols danced along the surface, ancient energy flowing through them. And in the center of the room, there was Billy, surrounded by swirling shadows like a whirlwind of despair. Billy. I'm here. She rushed forward, but the shadows recoiled, their presence a suffocating banshee scream around them. The figure from before stepped forward, grinning with malicious delight. You think you can save him? He taunted, fingers curling with palpable darkness. Let him go. Sarah demanded, grounding her feet as fear turned into fury. I won't let this happen. The figure's laughter rang out, cruel and twisted. It's too late. You've already made your choice. Shut up. She cried fiercely as the energies surged around her like a tempest, pushing back against the shadowy manifestations. I am not afraid of you. You feed on fear, but I refuse to give you mine. Tendrils of darkness inched toward her, trying to pull her into their depths, but she screamed a different truth. Billy was still there, still with her, and she had to fight for him. She reached into the journal, feeling its comforting weight in her hands, knowing deep down she possessed the means to alter their fate. By the binding light and power unknown, she shouted with determination. I command you to relent. Release him. The symbols on the walls began to shimmer, reacting to her incantation, vibrating with potent and electric energy. Foolish girl. The figure sneered, but the shadows faltered momentarily, recoiling as the air thickened with the incantation's force. Billy. Remember our bond. Sarah cried, reaching out toward him, feeling the invisible tether that connected their hearts. We can break this. Sarah, his voice trembled, but hope flickered in his gaze. Please don't stop. Fueled by his reassurance, she pushed deeper into the incantation, her voice rising with strength she didn't know she had. With every ounce of strength I possess, I claim back what is mine. Darkness, you do not own him. The walls trembled violently, shadows writhing, but she felt a response building, echoing through the very marrow of her bones. Suddenly, a burst of brilliant light erupted from the journal, flooding the room. The power surged, waves radiating outward like the dawn breaking through a long night. Shadows shrieked and writhed, their forms distorting under the radiant force. No. The figure roared, reaching out with elongated fingers. But Sarah stood her ground, arms outstretched to Billy, calling to the bond they shared. Come to me. In that moment, the light enveloped them both, forming a cocoon of luminous warmth, dispelling the darkness, dispelling the anguish, forging their connection anew. As the light intensified, the figure screeched, the shadows clawing at it, but it began to dissolve, breaking apart like fog in the morning sun. The chamber shuddered, the walls shattering as the energies recoiled, collapsing in waves, but she clung to Billy, feeling his presence strengthen, empowered by her love and unwavering determination. Then with one last, resounding crack, everything shifted, and the darkness swirled before exploding into a kaleidoscope of colors. The last echoes of the agonizing cries melted away as if they were silver threads, vanishing into the ether, they collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath as sunlight streamed through the crumbling walls, illuminating the room with warmth and clarity. Outside, the sounds of nature resumed a symphony of life returning after years of silence. You did it. Billy's voice shook as he looked at her, eyes wide in disbelief and hope. And so did you, Sarah replied breathlessly, tears mingling with laughter. We did this together. With newfound purpose and strength, they scrambled to their feet, realizing that the shadows had been banished, the curse severed. The farm, once dark and foreboding, now breathed with life. Let us get out of here, she said, heart racing with the realization of what they had achieved. Together, he agreed, a smile spreading across his face that lit up the remnants of the once haunted shadows. They stepped through the crumbling threshold of the chamber, venturing toward the light spilling through the gate. It felt like a portal, a doorway to a new beginning, leaving the darkness behind. As they emerged into the warm embrace of the outside world, laughter echoed in the air, a triumphant song to herald the fight they had endured, and the uncertain road ahead, now opened before them. It was a new dawn on the farm, where darkness once ruled, now filled with light and laughter. The summer they thought would be sinister had turned into a fierce testament of strength, love, and resilience they never knew they possessed. Goodbye to the past and hello to the hope of a brighter future. And now, before you leave this moment behind, there's something important to do. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss out on more exclusive stories that keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash that like button now. Let us feed the algorithm and let the world hear our story. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories. What did you think about this wild ride? And wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this conclusion. Real fans know how crucial it is to support the channel. Let us keep this story alive.